and then we'll have time for questions from the audience as well.
Mhm.
So I was jokingly and lovingly calling you the voice of Black news on Twitter and Threads. And so that's how first became familiar with your work. And I understand that you're a leader in so many other ways as well. But yeah, just wanted to open up with asking like what drives you to play that such a significant role in advancing journalism and being using new media to share news and information and updates that we need critically every day.
Yeah, Tia, thanks so much for having me on. I'm happy to be in the call with you. I think what was the last time we all saw each other at the bookstore? Was that last year? Oh my goodness,
Yep, it
I've
was
been
last year.
that
Yep.
last year. Oh my gosh, things are just time is just flying.
Time is flying.
Um, yeah. So again, my name is Phil Lewis. I am a deputy editor at HuffPost. I am the president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists. We're celebrating 50 years of just journalism here in the DC area. I'm based in Washington, DC, but I'm from Detroit. I'm hurting right now because my Pistons lost last night, but it's okay. Um, and yeah, I've been pretty much in this industry, I guess we'll say, since 2015. I started off as a intern at the time it was the Huffington Post. I see Lily. I think Lily is on the call. Lily was at HuffPost before. I think pretty much before I was.
Yeah.
Tina
Hey,
leading.
Phil. Hey,
Yes, hey
team.
Lily, leading
Hey,
up
everybody.
leading Black
Yes,
voices.
here supporting. Yes,
Yes,
everybody.
thank
What a
you.
time.
Oh my
What a
goodness, what a
time.
time. We're not even about to get into how amazing the work that BV was doing back then. But I was there as an intern, and then I went over to Mike.com in New York. Decided New York was just not for me. Came back to DC. Did about a year there. Came back to DC, and I've been at HuffPost from 2016 until now. So I've seen all of the iterations of HuffPost from ownership of Ariana Huffington to AOL to Oath to Verizon and then BuzzFeed, and now soon we're going to be owned by Byron Allen. So it's a little bit of everything going on, but yeah, I mean this a couple I guess 2 years ago I wrote a story about the media reparations movement, and it's prescient now because I mean there's even since that 20 because I wrote it in 2024, even since then there's been so much change within just that 2 year sort of period. I mean, we at the time I was writing about how media reparations can save the Black press, or how we need to be thinking about that. And in that time, we've seen Black newsrooms shutter. Right, we have the Richmond Free Press that was a staple in the Richmond community that they just shuttered. The Scanner over in Portland, which was one of the very few Black-owned outlets over on the west side of the country, and they shuttered as well after I believe they were around for 50 years. And so we're in a moment in time right now where we need to be thinking about what what will the next 50 years of journalism look like, right? So that's where I really wanted to write that story about media reparations, because I want to expose a audience, people at HuffPost or people that read stories that I'm putting out, to what journalism can look like, because it doesn't have to look like the last 50 years, right? There are people right now who are coming up with, uh, they're tired of how mainstream media looks, right? Like they're tired of newsrooms being owned by billionaires, being owned by these global conglomerates, right? And they're opening up their worker-owned outlets like what Aftermath um, and workers self-directed nonprofits like the 51st here in DC. So there are people who are deciding, okay, well, if we unionize and we come together and we're still getting laid off, why don't we just come and go direct to audience and do our own thing? And so the conversation that you all are having and the work that you all are doing right now is so important, because what people don't consider about news right now is that at its core, news is about community. And I think what Black newsrooms think about, or what Black newsrooms get right and really are strong, and I'll give some examples of it, are really focused on is that community aspect, right? And so black-owned newsrooms sort of need to be at the forefront of building these audiences, and we just need to think about how to do it now that these algorithms have changed and all of these things. I'm always thinking about how can we build audiences now that social media is destroyed and people's eyes are in so many different directions. So that's a lot. I don't even know if I answered your question, but like these are things that I'm always thinking about when it comes to um, news and when it comes to what Black audiences need to be thinking about when we're just thinking about news and what needs to happen in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And you answered my question and you sparked a bunch of different ones as well. So thank you so much for that introduction. I want to talk a little bit more about the landscape for Black journalists and what that means for Black audiences. And you started to touch on it a little bit, but if you could dive a little bit deeper about what's happening with layoffs and ownership
Mm.
changes and how those things are affecting Black journalists in particular, and then what that means for our Black audiences.
Yeah, so I mean, what people always ask, and so actually, maybe I should start here. In 2023, January 2023, I that around that time, Elon had decided to buy Twitter, right? Like it was around that time, and I decided to make a newsletter geared toward Black audiences because people, as soon as the news broke that Elon was going to buy Twitter, people had reached out to me and said, okay, I'm scared because I get my news from you. So if Elon buys Twitter and just decides to kick you off or whatever, because at the time, if you remember, no one knew what was going to happen. We were like, okay, well, maybe they'll just shut it down. So
Hmm.
I figured, okay, this is a really this point is where I need to figure out like I need to make a sort of a platform outside of social media because now I know that all of these algorithms they can deprioritize your links. And that's what a lot of newsrooms are noticing. I mean, even when just the other day I was reporting on Blavity shuttering 2190 and Home and Texture, and one of the main things that they were saying was, well, I mean, Google's AI feature in search has just destroyed is cratered our direct to audience traffic, right? So I for me, as somebody who was able to kind of build a brand through social media, which is almost impossible now in the same way, I figured like, okay, well, I just need to be direct to audience, and so emails, having your own front page, and this is at Huff. When I think about HuffPost, my work at HuffPost, our front page is still our strongest by far because it's just what it is. It's direct. We don't have to deal with any algorithms or anything like that. You just go to HuffPost.com and you click on the stories you want to see. And so that direct audience, I mean, is there's nothing like it. And I think now that social media has sort of really cratered um, folks' ability to kind of get their news out there, it's really become a struggle for even a lot of our Black-owned outlets, right? So that's why I created that newsletter. The newsletter focus is called What I'm Reading, and it's just a roundup of all the stories that I find interesting across the internet. It comes out every Friday, and so I created that just because I was really nervous that people were not going to find ways to either find myself or find stories that I found interesting, because I know that people rely on that now.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think that, and this is a leading question, but do you think that the power of Black organizing on social media is one of the reasons why the algorithms have been manipulated so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at it, when you look at the history of social media and the power and the attention that it's brought to, I mean, not just like Black Lives Matter, but also like internationally, movements internationally and in Africa and organizing. I mean, it sort of feels like these tech billionaires, they see that and they have found ways to destroy it, and and this is just my opinion, right? Like they saw that these movements are happening, and this is a powerful tool. Social media, just in general, is a powerful tool for organizing. And so organizing, as we tend to know, is kind of antithetical to what billionaires and sort of rich figures um, their interests, right? And so, I mean, it seems to me as though it's like a direct response, like buying these platforms and just totally turning them into racist cesspools. It's like a direct response to the power of the Black Lives Matter movement, which we, Black Lives Matter, but then also just other movements that we've seen. I mean, I remember when I was in college, my and this is before Black Lives Matter. The very first time that I thought and about just anything happening kind of outside my college bubble was Troy Davis, right? Troy Davis, who was killed in Georgia, who's on death row in Georgia. And I just remember seeing hashtags about Troy Davis. I'm like, who's Troy Davis? I'm just seeing it all over my timeline. Like, who is this? Who is this? I mean, things like that. Now it's so difficult to sort of see those sorts of things if you're not already following people who are covering that. And
Hmm.
so I just remember the internet is just not what it used to be even 10 years ago.
Yeah, it absolutely is not. And I think that you're right. I agree, having these seeing the organic power in the ways that communities connected online and use digital spaces to organize and to influence, these global movements, really, like you said, is absolutely the reason why we have these tech billionaires buying up not just the social media platforms, but also buying up corporate media platforms as well,
Mhm.
really wanting to own and control, right, the information that we all have and that we're able to share with one another and the ways that we communicate with one another. So I think that's really important. Thank you so much for your commentary on that. I want to shift a little bit to talk more about ways that journalists can organize. And so I know that you're a
Mm.
union member and you're with
Mm.
your NABJ chapter locally. Talk a little bit more about why that's so important.
Yeah, I really do believe so. When I joined, I guess full disclosure, I did not want to necessarily be president of the chapter. I was recruited, but I was just like, I don't know if I really want to do that because for just I guess further disclosure, I'm not like an NABJ baby. Like I didn't major in journalism. Like I'm not like I majored in sociology and I taught fifth grade and seventh grade in Detroit.
Mhm.
So I have a very sort of different background than most of I guess most journalists here in DC and probably everywhere else. And so I didn't think that that was something that was necessarily for me per se, but what I've noticed and what I've learned about it is that the only way through this moment that we're in right now is community and coming together. That is the only way. Like um, you can't get through this kind of by yourself in the moment that we're in. And so, and in my current position at HuffPost, I mean the HuffPost union, um, I mean has just been so it's been so crucial in helping me in my role. And unionizing, it's the way that we fight for each other and come together for each other, even when there are situations where we just can't do anything about it, where there are people are going to be laid off and things like that. I think it's tough, but I've seen, um, for example, here in DC, there's WNU, which laid off all of its, I believe, unionized members, uh, and this was part of DCist. They laid pretty much all of them off. Those folks went ahead and created another platform, and that was the 51st. They went ahead and created the 51st, a worker-owned collective, and them coming together, I think, is a good example of what Black newsroom leaders need to be thinking about, what Black journalists need to be thinking about. Because the thing about worker-owned outlets is that I think they're generally the future. Like I think we need to move away from the Condé Nast and the Jeff Bezoses of the world if we want to keep journalism community focused. Uh, but the critique that I have of these worker-owned outlets, and this is not about any one in particular, but I guess you would say all of them, is that a lot of them are replicating some of the same issues
Mm,
that are seen in the mainstream when it comes to not necessarily hiring diverse voices. Their newsrooms are not have no black people at all, right? Which is I think is you're going and you're sort of replicating the same sort of diversity issues that are in the mainstream, right? So I think everything is not doom and gloom. I think that there are some examples of people that are doing really great work. Like I really respect what the Baltimore Beat is doing. I
yeah,
really
I love that.
respect what Capital B is doing.
Mhm.
URL Media. Um, oh, the Sacramento Observer, which actually is a legacy black newspaper in Sacramento, and they have expanded. They've actually been growing thanks under the leadership of Larry Lee, whose father owned the Sacramento Observer. They've expanded to Stockton through some partnerships and some grants, I believe. And so I don't think everything is doom and gloom, and I think the work that you all are doing is really important to show people that things can be different. But what we have to do is have some courage behind it, and have some courage to try to do different things and try to new things, try new things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Courage is important. And I love what you said about, worker ownership being the future for keeping our media community mo focused. I think that's 100% true. And then, the challenges though, and this is why we're fighting for media reparations. A lot of times the challenges with worker ownership for Black journalists is having access to capital, right? And
Mm,
the opportunity to be able to own the means of production for an outlet, and to be able to have those startup costs in
yeah.
developing business models. And so wanting to highlight that as well. Um,
Mm.
okay, let's talk a little bit about this political moment and what are you seeing, what's happening with this administration, what's happening with local politics, attacks on voting rights, things of that nature. What's happening under this administration? Do you think how it's impacting Black journalists and Black communities from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything just sort of has like a trickle down effect, right? And um, when we lose newsrooms that are geared towards our communities, and they're replaced with, I guess we'll say news influencers, right? Which to be clear, I don't really have an issue with news influencers or anything like that. Um, but what I do want people to be very aware of, especially in this moment, is that you cannot only rely on like your favorite Instagram person to um, to cover the stories that are actually most important to cover, like to focus on or to cover, because when newsrooms disappear and when journalists disappear, your favorite news influencer will not have any content because they're not doing reporting, right? So like I think I tend to see it as an ecosystem, and the ecosystem has been it probably predate. I think it predates Trump, even though I'm speaking from a perspective of somebody. I have only known journalism through the lens of Trump because
Mm,
I started journalism in September 20. I started my career in September 2015 in the middle of the Trump campaign, right? So
mhm.
I'm sure it was probably, you know, journalism has always had its challenges. That's probably fair to say. But a lot of corporate greed has sort of sped up a lot of mistrust in media and more broadly. And then also just younger audiences who I think are disillusioned or just a bit skeptical about journalists. It's a combination of a lot of factors, and I think the political moment um, it's dangerous. It's really dangerous because a lot of people don't even know what's going on, right? Like there are people who reach out to me and say, I had no idea about this voting rights stuff until I saw your newsletter that posted because I dedicated a whole like section in my last newsletter. Hey, I said in my last newsletter um, to vote like the voting rights and what was going on. in Virginia, and it's just that I think that is the thing that makes me so nervous that when people, I think people won't realize the moment we're in until journalists are all gone or whatever,
Right.
and then we're just relying on like our favorite aggregator to do that, and that's a lot of that's why I'm still. People tend to ask, why haven't you like started your own thing, or like why don't you just go independent? Luckily, I'm still at HuffPost, but I think that it's an ecosystem of things. Like we cannot all rely on Substack. And
Right.
I think a lot of the strongest journalism is done through teams, through a reporter, through editor, through thankfully legal team, through all of these.
Hmm.
Like you sort of need it's a team effort that is able to kind of produce a lot of the most um, interesting and provocative journalism that we need to know, and everybody does not have the access and like you were saying, like the capital to do that on Substack. And Deborah Turnus, who is the former, she's the former head of news at BBC, at the BBC News. She did a lecture recently, and I'm gonna let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna put the her excerpt in the chat here, but it's she gave a lecture about how news media needs to catch up to the moment that we're in, which is people are focusing on like the Joe Rogans and like these figures that are dominating like the conversations and coverage, but they're not. These people are not doing reporting, right? And that's what we need to do a better job of explaining to our audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Explaining to our audiences that, and I think that there's something about technology and social media that kind of flattens people's understanding of and not making being able to make a distinction between news and journalism and reporting and information and entertainment. And I think that this moment that we're in, this environment that we're in, the news environment that we're in, makes that really it makes those very muddy, right? Because people are
Mm,
so used to what's being fed to them through their screens, our phone screens especially, being for entertainment or being for a trending topic. And so distinguishing between news and quality information and entertainment and what's being aggregated as opposed to what's somebody's opinion, right? Different things like that. I think that there's something about media, so about social media and mobile media that makes that distinction even harder for people to make. And so what you're doing
yeah.
and the line that you're trying to draw is so important. Well, I don't want to hog you all to myself. I want to open it up for questions now from our participants on the call. So if you have a question for Phil, you can unmute, you can put it in the chat. If you have a question or a comment about something that has been shared, would love to hear from our participants on the call today.